rather mild night. As we start off Sunday in the north, then there is going to be an east-west split. Quite a lot of cloud to start the day, particularly along that eastern side, with that producing a bit of drizzle in places. It will try to burn back, but really the best of the sunshine is certainly going to be for the Highlands, Lewis and Harris and Argyll and Bute. A few sunny spells also developing as we head throughout the day for Northern Ireland once the fog begins to clear its way off, but you'll see those showery outbreaks of rain spreading across much of Wales, central southern areas of England, and they will continue right throughout the day. Again, there is a rain warning in force, so we could see further spray on roads, surface water issues, so it certainly is worth taking care and keeping up to date with the forecast. The graphics here not to be taken too literally, but it just gives an indication that that western side really could see some quite heavy pulses of rain. Quite humid in amongst all of this as well. Temperatures topping up around 20 to 21 degrees Celsius, 20 even possible across the sunnier spots of northwest Scotland. That rain will linger as we head throughout Sunday evening, stalling a bit across Wales and the Midlands before it gradually wants to shift its way eastwards as we head throughout the day on Monday. But things generally staying unsettled into the new working week, and it's also looking to turn cooler for all of us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be good luck.
The Britain I grew up was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public.
Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth, available at gbnews.com.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Monday, the king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamon Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, along with Alex Armstrong, Dr. Renee Hoendekamp, Andy Williams, and Lizzie Cundy. Tonight on the show.
Outrageous pay, Sue Gray.
The human rights of UK citizens should trump those of foreign killers.
Lamentable Lammy's loony climate change alarmism.
Is Starmer our worst ever Prime Minister?
Reform's lack of serious thinking has been exposed.
It's 6 p.m, and this is the Saturday 5. A very warm welcome to the Saturday 5, my friends. Now, I've just legged it out of the Reform Party conference and straight into the GB News studio like a gazelle on caffeine. Maybe I had a pint or two in the spirit of the man himself, Nigel Farage, but don't worry, Dr. Renee's got me hooked on an IV drip to get me through both the hangover and Andy Williamson moan about the Reform Party that's got more momentum, in my view, than a runaway freight train. Now, speaking of runaway, earlier this week the papers were buzzing with a story about a school that affirmed a child's new identity as a wolf. Yeah. It's true. We're prioritising whackery and wokery over maths and English. But after that conference, my friends, I'd say Nigel Farage is quite the wolf himself. Teeth out, growling straight at the Conservative monopoly on the right. Now, I even called up Sir Keir Starmer to see if Lord Ali, you know, his generous fashion benefactor, could cover my drinks bill from the Reform Party conference. No luck, sadly. We'll have no biting on this show, mind, but plenty of fur flying and growl-like snarls. You know the drill. Each host outlines their argument about a chosen topic, then we all pile in, and that's when the fur begins to fly. And of course, we want your views as well. Please do send them through and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/yoursay. And don't forget to ask your questions in Ask the Five. No topics are off limits. But my friends, before we start tearing each other apart, it's his Saturday Night News with Tatiana Sanchez.
Darren, thank you. The top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has arrived at the Labour Party conference today. Sir Keir Starmer said Labour's conference would show how Labour are fixing the foundations and rebuilding our country. Arriving at that conference centre in Liverpool earlier on alongside his deputy Angela Rayner, the Prime Minister said it was Labour's biggest conference ever.
Just started. And today we're going to set out, and over the next coming days, how we're fixing the foundations and rebuilding our country. So enjoy conference. Very, very good to be here.
Meanwhile, today is day 2 of the Reform Conference in Birmingham, with party leader Nigel Farage giving his farewell address earlier this afternoon. Last night, Mr Farage told supporters he believes Reform can win the next general election, given the number of people that agree with their principles. He also explained what drove him to stand as Clacton's MP once the election was called earlier this year.
At almost every level, we'd been betrayed. And then I thought about what was happening on our streets. And frankly, I thought to myself, Britain is broken. And then I couldn't help it. But if Britain is broken, then logically, Britain needs reform.
Meanwhile, Mr Farage has signed over ownership of the party, meaning he could feasibly be removed by a vote of no confidence going forward. Unlike most political parties, Reform UK was originally formed as a limited company, with Mr Farage holding most of the shares. But as of now, the Reform leader has relinquished the ownership, and members will now be able to vote on party policies. Thousands have gathered for a march for Palestine, making its way through the streets of Liverpool today. Organised by the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, the group say their demands include ending the genocide, stopping the arming of Israel and saying no to the war in the Middle East. They also say they'll be directing these aims towards the government at the annual Labour Party conference, which begins tomorrow. This year marks the 80th anniversary of Operation Market Garden and the Battle of Arnhem. Celebrations in the Netherlands this weekend will commemorate 80 years since 1900 Allied troops parachuted into the then-occupied country with the aim of recapturing the bridges of Arnhem. Throughout the day today, the contemporary equivalents of those men have been recreating the drop at Ginkle Heath in Ida, jumping from an aircraft into the same place our troops would have landed 8 decades ago. Earlier, Brigadier Mark Berry told GB News how it feels to be there on the ground today.
I think the struggle that soldiers felt here on the ground, the very, very difficult conditions that they faced, epitomise what any one of us feel we could be called to face in the modern era. And therefore, we come here to commemorate the bravery of those who went before us and to challenge ourselves to think about their bravery and will we be brave enough when our time comes.
And tonight, Anthony Joshua will challenge Daniel Dubois for the IBF World Heavyweight title at a sold-out Wembley Stadium. The all-British fight will see Joshua try to take that title from Dubois in an attempt to join the likes of Muhammad Ali, Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield by becoming a 3-time world heavyweight champion. Things remained relatively calm at the weigh-in yesterday, although both fighters have said they'll do whatever it takes to win. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. I'll be back with more in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My friends, it's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes and I can promise that you're in for a very lively show. We're going to crack on with tonight's first debate and I'm going to kick us off by talking about David Lammy. He delivered a speech so daft that it makes Diane Abbott's reign as Shadow Home Secretary look like, well, world award-winning material. He says that climate change is a bigger threat than terrorism or war. And enter the global clean power absurdity. He's actually went on the world stage and signed up a total sum of nobody. Lamentable Lammy waving his virtue signalling flag on the world stage comes at a time while our debt has hit 100% of our gross domestic product, a milestone that hasn't been achieved since actual World War II. But sure, my friends, let's splash the cash. £12 billion on foreign climate change victims. Genius, eh? Britain's real vulnerability, to me, is energy policies that mean we import coal that we need for steel and cement from abroad, all thanks to this nut zero policy. We've binned well-paid jobs here so we can ship in that coal from elsewhere. If we went to war, we'd be about as match fit as a limp lettuce. And here's a fun stat for you. Since 2005, 95 people in Britain have been murdered in Islamist attacks. The far right, 3 of them. Islamism takes up 75% of MI5's time. But you wouldn't know that if you listened to this hysterical climate clown. How exactly does 1% of global CO2 emissions that we produce pose a bigger threat than terrorism here at home? And while we're at it, Sir Keir People's Champion Starmer is listening to farmers while refusing to rule out slashing their budget alongside pensioners' budgets at a time when energy prices are going up. If we've got no farms, we've got no food. It's really that simple. Labour's plan, to me, is to turn farmland into wind farmland. And believe me, there's plenty of wind coming out that man's gob. The man is a walking fraud. Britain's only crisis is this hysterical virtue signalling by elites more worried about global brownie points than keeping this country secure. Take your fine fashion clobber and do one. I've had enough. Anyway, I should be hung up for more often, shouldn't I?
That's it, debate over.
That's
You're
it,
right.
yeah. We'll end the show there. Andy Williams.
Hello.
Hello. What do you make of that?
I think what David Lammy was actually saying is that climate change is a fundamental long-term threat to the UK and to the world. It comes with opportunities as well as threats. We have a massive opportunity to become a leader in the global green economy. If we invest in the right technologies, we can create jobs that don't yet exist. So there's opportunity as well as threat. But the key thing is the cumulative death toll from rises in global temperatures since 2000 is 4 million. That is a huge number, and that's according to the UN. That's a huge number of people who have died as a result of climate change. And so what David Lammy is saying is this is a long-term existential threat and it needs to be tackled.
Renee, I don't know about you, but when I walk around on the streets of London, I fear being stabbed by some jihadi. You know, I've had threats on the streets of London, as many viewers know. I actually don't walk out fearing a gust of wind.
No. I mean, look, I think it's really interesting that he used those words. And actually, for the Foreign Secretary, who is supposed to be the person who can, you know, engender good relationships all around the world with all leaders of the world, to actually say something like terrorism is worse than the threat from climate change, perhaps he should go and speak to the parents of the children killed by terrorism at the Manchester Arena when they were blown up for attending a concert. It's inhumane, it's completely tone deaf and it lacks empathy. And I think he's just demonstrating again that he's not fit for such a high office as the Foreign Secretary. He really isn't.
He's actually done a really good job of building, of strengthening and rebuilding our relationships.
Oh, stop it! I'm sorry. I can't listen to you any longer. He even turns up. He even turns up to meet a world leader in grubby, old trainers. Oh, please have some respect.
Especially after you've just been given a load of clobber by this rich donor.
Well, we don't know whether David Lammy has.
Exactly. Now, why doesn't he put?
I think he has.
He has. He's another one to add to the list. So why doesn't he put his energies into looking at the other countries that really do have high emissions, like China, America, India? Why? Look, our economy is hurting at the minute. Why is he doing this to the economy? And frankly, I don't think he knows what he's doing. I think he's out of his depth.
You mentioned there on the world stage that David Lammy is this new intellectual colossus. But actually, I would argue that no one has signed up to his global, whatever it's called, this new Clean Power Alliance.
They are actually, most world leaders and most of his counterparts would agree with him.
Initiative, no one signed up to it. No country has. He is making us look like a clown show.
Look like fools.
The clown may have changed, but the circus is still the same as far as Labour's concerned.
We are trying to establish a global leadership position on an issue that all world leaders, all serious world leaders, agree is massively important.
Alex?
They do.
Well, look, listen, I think this whole net zero agenda is designed and is hurting the poorest people in our society. Yeah. And Labour is meant to be the party of the working class and the poorest. All this party's done since it's got into power is punish those same people. It's saying it's going to bring down energy prices. That's part of Keir Starmer's commitment. But if anything, energy prices are going to go back up alongside inflation. And all at a time, we've got Ed Miliband parading around with a ukulele, singing about how wind farms are going to save the country. They're not.
No.
What really saves people in this country is turning on oil and gas and shipping more of it to rich
on
people.
That point about wind farms and solar farms, do you worry about the impact that it'll have on actual land to produce food for farming and things like that? Because Labour have said they're considering cutting the budget, at least they didn't rule it out, cutting the budget of farming support, subsidy.
Well, I don't think it should be, I don't think it needs to be an either or. I think we obviously need to protect farming. It's a really, really important industry.
But call me...
Of course it is.
But are they doing this deliberately to make up their summer land so that he can, help out some more green subsidies to pave over the countryside?
Well, we do need more wind farms and we do need more solar farms.
We need...
Oh, please. What about our farmers? They're not only fleecing our pensioners, now our farming industry. You have to look at what they're doing and what they're giving, to foreign aid, 9 billion, to climate change, over 11.3 billion. Well, the first order of any government is to look after its own people. David Lammy is not doing that.
I mean, if you want to talk about foreign aid, actually, that's a really important tool of soft power, and I think the fact that we don't invest 0.7% of GDP in it anymore is a shame, and I think it's weakened our global leadership position.
All right, we'll leave that there and let Andy stew. Right. Who's up next, then?
Yeah, it's me, Darren.
Oh, and, another one that was at Reform Party conference.
I'm a little bit worse for wear, but we'll get through it. Not more worse for wear than Sue Gray. Outrageous pay, Sue Gray. She's the only pensioner in this country that's not going to freeze to death this winter, and that's because she, guess what, earns more than our Prime Minister and any cabinet minister in our country. Personally, I think she should be out of her job. She should never put herself before our country. She had multiple opportunities and was given multiple opportunities to lower her pay to under Keir Starmer's pay so she would avoid the negative headlines, and supposedly she outright denied to do it. Now today, the front pages are a splash with Sue Gray, who looks like she's got herself into a bit of spot of bother because she's also tried to lower the salaries of her colleagues in Downing Street to less than what they're being paid today. So, Sue Gray, outrageous pay, see you later, and I think no civil servants, no SPAD, anyone working underneath the Prime Minister should ever earn more than him. Andy, do you think Sue Gray has outrageous pay?
Let's separate two things out. Do I think she's paid too much for the job that she has? No. It's a very important job. Should she be paid more than the Prime Minister? Absolutely not. And I cannot understand why, given that she was told that this was going to be a problem, if this was going to become a story, if she took more money than Keir Starmer, she was told that, she knew that, and she still didn't row back and take less. And I think it's just pure stupidity.
Well,
and it's causing Labour problems.
I don't think it's stupidity. I think it's arrogance.
Yeah.
I think it's contempt for the electorate.
Well, it might be.
They won this loveless landslide, more like a land mess. And they're actually saying to the public, well, you know, we can pay her whatever we want to. This woman who, let's not forget, was part of the Partygate report that done over Boris Johnson, she's got exactly what she wanted. She's played her cards right, and, well, all for court, no knickers.
I think it's really important the audience know that the Telegraph reported that Sir Keir Starmer actually signed this off. So he agreed to give Supe this massive pay rise.
Which I find so hypocritical, because don't we remember with Dominic Cummings, what he said to Boris Johnson with him getting £40,000 more, made such a big deal of it. But, you know, never would Dominic Cummings being wages more than Boris. This is absolutely outrageous, and I think we see her in her true colours of what she is. She could have stopped this, and she didn't. She wanted the money, and it shows greed, it shows she's selfish, and she actually doesn't care, and arrogance.
Yeah, I think it really shows arrogance. I think they've come to power. They can't believe they got this majority that they did, that they didn't win. We just voted out the Tories. And I think they're carried away with their own power at the moment. And I think it's showing with Sue Gray. I think it's showing every single corner that you shine a light on of this new shambolic government.
Andy, we should sack her. Shouldn't Keir Starmer sack her?
No, he shouldn't, because the government is 12 weeks old and there's a ton of stuff that needs to get done, and she's an important cog in that machine. But what I would say is that if you're the story as an advisor 12 weeks into a government, that is a massive problem. Going back at 20 years or so, when Alistair Campbell became the story, he resigned because he knew he'd gone too far. And she needs to just get back in her box, as far as I'm concerned. On Dominic Cummings, he was earning more than Sue Gray in real terms 4 years ago. So let's just be very clear about that. He's no saint either.
I'm not saying he's a saint, but this is hypocritical, and they're supposed to be the do-good party for the working man. This is outrageous, I have to say. And you will see at the Labour conference. You will see tomorrow the outrage. I think you're going to see a lot of people not happy. Your members are going to be really upset.
Esther, though, Andy, is that not a worry for you as a supporter right now when they're briefing against each other and there's clearly a power imbalance within Number 10?
I think there's a power clash. You've got Sue Gray and Morgan McSweeney, and they are sort of on equal footing, and they're wanting to do things in different ways. It is a worry. It's a massive distraction, and I think it needs to stop. But Lizzie, just what is it that bothers you? Is it that she's earning 170k, or that she's earning more than the Prime Minister?
Both, actually.
Don't you think 170 grand to be Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister seems like a fair salary?
I think it's too much in this. We're in a high cost of living with everything, and they're supposed to be for the working man. I think it's quite outrageous. And she's getting more, and she knew getting more than Keir Starmer.
If you want top talent in government, you've got to pay for it.
But Andy, it's the hypocrisy that stinks for most people. Most people wouldn't bat an eyelid at pay of people in Downing Street. I don't think they want them to be earning this much money, if we're being honest, but most people would understand if that was an important position. That it's the hypocrisy that the Labour Party have shown and the contempt they've shown for the British people by saying, you can't do that, Tories, but when they get into government, they do exactly the same thing as they said that you shouldn't do.
Exactly, because on Dominic Cummings' pay salary increase, Sir Keir Starmer tweeted out saying that actually the mask has slipped for Boris Johnson.
Yeah. So, there's always a tweet.
And he kept saying about the elderly, that all their bills going up. And look what he's doing to our own pensioners this very minute.
Those are two completely different issues. I just don't think they're even remotely related. That
But it's optics, isn't it, Andy? It's optics. You've got pensioners wondering what they're going to do without this 300 quid, which is almost nothing when someone's being paid £170,000. And most people don't really know who Sue Gray is. She's not the Prime Minister.
No, and nor should they, and I'd much prefer it if no one had ever heard of her.
Says she might be, actually.
Well, I'm sure Angela Rayner is absolutely fuming because multiple Whitehall sources have said that she thinks she's Deputy Prime Minister and she acts like she is a funnel for all information that goes to the PM.
She's pulling the strings.
Andy, can I put one of our viewers' questions to you? Martin says, what is a real threat to Britain is single pensioners who don't have the income to replace a broken boiler, for example, to fix leaking roofs or windows, and they're considered too wealthy on an annual income of £11,500. But the grandstanding on the world stage is a nonsense, as we're basically bankrupt. Do you actually worry then that all of this in the round is actually making Labour look entirely out of touch to the British public, and that explains why their polling numbers are dropping like a hot potato?
Well, I think, firstly, Keir Starmer is still the most popular party leader in the country.
Are you joking?
No, it's true. Look at the Daily Mail today.
I don't agree with you there.
According to polling in the Daily Mail today, that is the case. So I'm just going on today's polling. But, you know, maybe that polling is wrong.
I think it is.
But 53% of British people think he's doing a very bad job. That's also polling.
But hang on, answer Martin's exact question.
Yeah, I will. So I think we're looking at two different things. I understand why some people might think it's out of touch, but the reality on the winter fuel allowance is that 80% of the people who were getting winter fuel allowance didn't need it, and that's Age UK's own figures, right? So I understand there are people at the lower end and on the margins who need support, and I think it's important.
2 million.
The government does. Well, it's important the government does everything they can to make sure those people
let's
continue
be honest,
to get
right?
winter
All
fuel
of
allowance.
these people in government who leave on these salaries, they go on to really high-paid jobs and, you know, milk the...
And they milk the system.
Yeah, beautiful pensions.
But let's be serious. If we want good, high-quality, capable, well-educated people at the top levels of government, we have to
There
pay
is
them a reasonable
absolutely no
amount.
part of me that sees any competence and top talent in the government.
In the corporate world, a lot of the people at the top of number 10 would be earning several
They're not
times
in the corporate world, they chose public service.
OK, exactly. Right, we'll leave that one there. Still to come, though, as his brand-new government comes under increasing pressure over policies and scandals, is Sir Keir Starmer Britain's worst-ever Prime Minister already? We'll thrash that one out next. You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
My next guest is a composer and film director whose musical journey began at the tender age of 4.5 when he started playing the piano. Under the tutelage of luminaries such as Sir George Benjamin and Sir Harrison Birtwistle, he has honed his craft, primarily grounding himself in the classical world. He's written music in sets of composition in the 24 major and minor keys of the chromatic scale, producing an album which is accompanied by 24 videos, and it's called 24. I'm joined now by Fabio D'Andrea. Fabio, great to see you. Tell me a little bit, I'm a layman when it comes to music, tell me a little bit about how a composer chooses a key and what it means to the composer to have chosen the key.
Sure. Well, I think every musical key, and there's 24 of them, major and minor, they have their own feel. So you could play a piece in, say, C major, which is normally regarded as the simple key, it's all the white notes on the piano. But if you play that piece, say, in A-flat major, it's going to have a very different feel. So I decided to create this project, 24 pieces, again, looking back at our traditions and the history of what composers have done in the past, especially in regards to piano music, and explore every key, see if I could bring out the emotion that you feel from that actual key itself.
Were you fonder of some than others? I imagine, for example, you're not so fond of C because it's too straightforward.
Actually, no, I love all of them. And that's the beauty of music. Every key has its own feel. And some keys are associated with different feelings. So, for example, C major has actually been historically associated with victory. It's quite a victorious feel about it. I love D-flat major. That's quite mellow. But every key has its own special feeling. And sometimes something will just sound different in that one key, and it's meant to be in that key. So for me, this has been a whole exploration of that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for all of your messages on gbnews.com/your say. Mark says, well, Andy, has 2 tiers stopped the boats yet? All of that cash at the top and no action, eh?
course he hasn't. He's only had 12 weeks.
Well, he said he would get his new top chief of border command in straight away.
How did the last government do on that
Could have been
front?
flying them to Rwanda now.
Yeah, they cancelled
They're
that.
going to Albania instead, aren't they? That's the new plan.
Yeah, well, and...
World tour.
Mark also points out that Nigel Farage is actually currently the top leader for the public. So, yeah, I mean, it strikes me that Farage has momentum.
He has the momentum.
Yeah. Yeah.
So does Keir, but it's down.
Yeah. Apparently 3,000 people signed up to reform overnight. Were you one of them, Andy?
I certainly was not.
It's got the blues.
Go on, Andy.
You know,
Who's next up then?
Well, it's me.
Oh.
Before I start, can I just say, do you like my new spectacles?
A bit scary.
Is the designer Lord Ali by any chance?
I actually bought them myself, unlike some. So, is Keir Starmer our worst ever Prime Minister? Well, let me tell you, he seems to see things through rose-coloured specs. They're the free ones. Let's start. Glasses over 2,500. Clothes galore for him and his wife. We've got holidays, yes, and don't forget that Arsenal box. That's over £8,000 a week. Yes, folks, that's true. All that's missing, really, is like a speedboat or a cuddly toy. It's like the generation game. Keeps on coming. Yet he's quite happy, isn't he, to take off our dear pensioners and favour the unions. Yes, we're at their peril. And the wealth are leaving. They really are, this country, with the huge the tax hikes which are going through the roof. I mean, let me tell you, in the last 5 months, 4,500 millionaires have already left this country, headed to Dubai or warmer climates, because they can't bear the coming tax rates. They're going to hit us all. And borrowing has risen to 13.7 billion. And we're now living in this nanny state. Yes, don't you dare go and have a cigarette in that pub garden, I'm telling you. And you can't write anything on Facebook, no, indeed. And he's still giving, though we're really on our knees, to the foreign aid. Yes, they're giving 9 billion and climate ideology over 11.3 billion. So I'm asking you, really, is this government got our interests at first? You know, the first order of any government is to have their own people at the forefront. I tell you, I think, in my eyes, he's the worst ever Prime Minister.
Oh, well, Andy, we've got to let you have a bite of the cherry there. You think he's the best thing since sliced bread?
No, I think Tony Blair's the best thing since sliced bread.
Oh, God.
But
GB News viewers are going to be turning in their sofas listening to
I hope so. No, of course, obviously, even Keir Starmer's harshest critics wouldn't say that he was the worst Prime Minister ever. I mean, the two worst Prime Ministers of all time have both been Prime Minister within the last 5 years, and their names are Boris Johnson, who did more to debase the office of Prime Minister than anybody else. If you're talking about hospitality and gifts, he took more money from donors, most of which he didn't declare, actually. He was having his food delivered to Downing Street. He was having his gold wallpaper paid
But Boris Johnson, may I step in? Boris Johnson wasn't pretending to be holier than thou, and you know, for the working man. So, you know, all of that is out the window, because that's what Keir Starmer has given this false whole image to the electorate.
And Boris Johnson didn't stand on a platform of, I'm going to get rid of sleaze. The grown-ups are in the room, and we are going to be the people who serve you. That's where he stood on, time and time again.
And Andy, answer this question, right? Starmer's popularity, if you look at the polling, that actually tells us that he's about under the 30% mark. For John Major, that took 397 days. For Harold Wilson, it took 664 days. For Boris, it was 675 days. And for Tony Blair, it was 1,082 days.
See?
Now, the question I put to you there, it's when you work that out as 11 times faster than the average of 765 days for most leaders, releasing criminals, as Lizzie says, pursuing those on Facebook, this net zero penchant for making things expensive in this country and making our pensioners freeze. Well, it's like the man's got a death wish, isn't it?
Well, I mean, on releasing prisoners, that was something he was forced into doing because the previous Prime Minister was so was so cavalier to let the prisons get to a stage where they were at capacity. So
actually, can I just say, Tony Blair was one that knew the prisons were crumbling and schools and did nothing about it. Let me tell you. And what is so awful is that if I have a friend who has suffered with domestic abuse and is so scared at night that her ex-partner is going to be released. How can Starmer sleep at night when he's releasing, all the wrong people and letting in the wrong people into prisons? It's absolutely disgraceful.
That, and it's really awful. No Prime Minister wants to release a load of prisoners, but you can't blame Tony Blair for the state of prisons 17 years after he left.
The thing is, Andy, is that Free Gear Keir, I think his new name is, Two-Tier Keir, Free Gear Keir. I don't know what else we can come up with tonight.
Well done.
We have to make some more.
We can all do rhymes, Alex.
That's right. I mean,
all do rhymes.
It's fantastic stuff. But he's getting the names because this is the stuff he's guilty of. And I think if you're this early on into your prime ministerial run and the Nets rating for you is about -19, you're in big trouble. If the general election was called tomorrow, he'd be out.
No, he wouldn't.
Do you know what is so awful? They didn't even have tags on some of those that were released early, and they don't know where they are. They weren't tagged because they weren't equipped. They weren't ready for the influx of prisoners coming out.
Deal with the problems the last Tory government, and there's plenty of criticism there, that's for sure. Whether or not he's got to deal with those problems doesn't change how he behaves. It doesn't change how we've got 10,000 foreign criminals in our prisons. Why don't we deport them? We'll solve the overcrowding problem, and people will be safe on our streets.
Well, I'll talk to you about that later, because it seems we can't deport one person. But I think it's absolutely right. And actually, all of these things are choices, all of them. They chose to get rid of Rwanda. They could have used it. They could have tried. But no, because it was a game to them. It was schoolboy politics.
No, it wasn't. It was a failing policy that was costing loads of money and achieving the square root of nothing.
So they should have tried it rather than dump 500 million quid. They should have tried it first.
In the last 7 days, 1,200 have come over, and him smashing the gangs. I'd like to say, what is he actually doing with smashing the gangs?
Can you just answer the substance of what Lizzie said, which is, he's the worst Prime Minister that we've ever known? Could you just make the case that he's not?
Well, I mean, 2 words, Liz Truss. Done. Liz Truss was out, but Liz Truss was out by now.
He's given the letters a good run for the money, let me tell you.
Liz Truss is Britain's worst Prime Minister.
He's made Liz Truss look like the world's best leader that we've ever known.
No, Darren, even you don't believe that. I mean, Keir Starmer has had a rocky start from a comms perspective.
Rocky?
Obviously, all of this stuff about clothing is not ideal. I wish he'd never taken them. I don't think it's great. I think the comms has been terrible. I think the Sue Gray stuff is... I actually think the football stuff is fine, by the way. I think the football thing is completely fine, because I do think it's a security risk.
And yet, why was Richie?
Really funny, by the way.
Absolutely not.
Lammy have flown to multiple different countries together, and every time they get leave, they're empty-handed.
Yeah, exactly.
As Renee says...
So Prince William sits in the stands at Aston Villa.
Rishi Sunak did.
Rishi Sunak at Southampton.
Do you really think that Prince William sits in the stands at Aston Villa and there are no security people around?
Well, no, they wouldn't give him security.
He's going to get security. He doesn't need to have over £8,000 it's costing to go to watch Arsenal, and it's not about Arsenal, because
we'll
I
leave
support
that one
Chelsea.
there. Still to come, though, my friends. Renee, as she says, has got something to tell you, and it ain't good, folks. But we'll also be asking if British schools teaching so-called toxic masculinity is right for our kids. You won't believe the scale of which it's happening. That's tonight's big interview. But next, after their landmark conference in Birmingham, are Reform UK taking politics seriously enough? Moni Andy has got some words. So with Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Some of us certainly ended astronomical summer with a bang. We've seen a few thunderstorms around across southern areas today, and there's the continuing chance that we see a few of those pushing across central into parts of Wales. We might clip into the far south of Northern Ireland as we head throughout the evening. We've then got a second pulse of thundery rain pushing its way into the far south of England as we head towards dawn on Sunday morning. Quite muggy and humid amongst all of this as well. Temperatures not dropping too far at all, but it will be chillier for the northwest of Scotland underneath the clearer skies here. Might see a touch of frost in some very sheltered areas. And for Scotland, Sunday is certainly one of a east-west split. The best of the sunshine will be across those western areas. Quite a nice fine start for Lewis and Harris, the Highlands, Argyll and Bute as well, but the clouds still lingering along those eastern coastal areas, maybe with some drizzle around at times. It will try and burn back a bit as we head throughout the day. Northern Ireland seeing some sunshine during the afternoon as well, but for much of Wales, central southern areas of England, this band of rain will be steadily pushing its way northwards with some very very heavy pulses possible, and there is a rain warning in force throughout the day. So do take care if you are travelling or out and about. Some disruption is certainly possible. Again, it is going to be quite warm and humid even amongst all this rain, so temperatures where you do start to see some of those sunny spells emerging into the afternoon could still see highs around 20 or 21 degrees Celsius. 18 to 20 degrees Celsius is certainly also possible for the likes of Oban and Fort William pulses in western Scotland. This area of low pressure that's bringing that rain on Sunday is going to become quite slow moving on Monday as well, and so there's potential for further heavy rain around at times. There's still some uncertainty just in regards to the exact placement of this rain, so it's worth keeping up to date with the forecast. But another rain warning is in force throughout much of Monday. Again, some disruptions, surface water issues and spray on roads is possible. Generally dry further towards the north, but you'll start to see some of that rain pushing into the far north of Scotland, and that heralds in a slight change as we head over the next few days, things turning cooler with a northerly wind setting in. Bye-bye.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for all of your messages, apart from these ones. Margaret has written in, and Margaret says, "Oh my goodness, who did his makeup? Him being me. He looks like a clown. Casper, shocking. It's called the Reform Party Conference Bar. That's what it's called." But then, to conflict what Margaret's written in, Jonathan says, "Whatever has happened to Darren? He looks 20 years younger."
You do?
Also,
what have you been up to?
Who knew pints could be so authoritative?
Were they doing Botox at the Reform Party?
Yeah, I did. It was Nigel himself. Lord Abbey supplied the, serum, and then we were away. Anyway, it's time. Speaking of Reform Conference, it's time for our next debate. And who's going to lead us off on reform?
That'll be me. As we've just been hearing, Darren and Alex have been with Nigel Farage and the Reform Party at their party conference in Birmingham. But according to reports, it's been notable for the complete lack of ideas about how the Reform Party would actually change Britain. The party, in Farage's own words, is amateurish. There was plenty of talk about scrapping net zero, ending the BBC licence fee, every pet subject of the populist right. But where's the serious thinking about what British people really care about? Putting more money back in people's pockets and growing the economy. If Britain is broken, as Nigel Farage says, where are their solutions? And if Nigel Farage seriously thinks he stands a chance of becoming the next Prime Minister, he's more delusional than even I thought he was.
Well, let me start you off here, Andy. Having just been there and listened to the manifesto, listened to the topics that were discussed, they are talking about the thing that most people in this country want to talk about. Immigration being one of them, our broken NHS. All these things, particularly immigration, which is, I think 85% of British people think this is the #1 issue in the country now.
That's completely untrue,
No,
Alex.
it's not at all. It's been polled by multiple pollsters that it's now the top issue in our country. And British people, it's the unheard majority of people, most likely. But reform stands for things that the unheard group of people in this country want to be, gives them a voice.
An Ipsos poll on Friday looked at exactly what you're saying, the idea that reform speaks for the voiceless, and it's not true. On every single major issue in Britain, reform is out of step with the general public. Factually, on every level. Less than 1 in 5 people in Britain...
Nonsense.
Less than 1 in 5 people in Britain say that immigration is their top priority, according to this poll.
And Keir Starmer couldn't ever answer one question or give his policies on that before the election.
He could, and he has plans. What I want to know, Alex, because you were there, so maybe you can enlighten me, because I wasn't there, hands up, so maybe the reporting has been unfair. I want to know, what is Nigel Farage's plan to get the economy growing again?
Well, the whole point of the conference, and Matt Goodwin actually had a fantastic statement. He said, focus on the issues that are affecting British people the most. And immigration is the top issue, as I said. I'm absolutely confident about those numbers on that. Restarting the economy is going to take time, but we can't restart the economy when we've got low-skilled, poorly paid labour coming in and sucking up all that extra cash for working-class people. We can't start. We've got to start somewhere, and immigration is the first place.
I'm going to say this, Andy. I think polls are really interesting on this kind of topic. Firstly, you used the term when you gave your lovely little speech, populist right. Populist is the new insult. It used to be far right, now it's populist right. So things that are popular and are gravitating people towards the same point, i.e. Nigel Farage, is now an insult. So, you know, you can call me populist. I'm a populist. I love it. But the thing that's really important is that people are so shouted at by people like you for having views that might align with reforms, that when they're polled by Ipsos and YouGov and whoever else, they just say what they think is the easiest route out so they don't get shouted at.
And I'll tell you what it is. It's the craven MSM that have convinced people that their views are utterly toxic and beyond the pale, that they think that having border controls and actually not taxing everyone out of existence and not actually ensuring that pensioners shiver in their own homes are all extreme views. You know, you can't possibly reduce taxation. You can't possibly grow the economy. You can't possibly have an energy policy that doesn't ensure that we're all left either choosing between food or fuel. All of these things are utterly absurd. You have made us, I'm afraid, on your side of the fence, painted us as a nation of swivel-eyed bigots when we are not. We are a nation of common-sense individuals who are small-c conservative in our views and values. And I just totally reject this slander of the 4 million people who voted for reform. I think, Andy, that you want to pray to Almighty God that the Labour Party don't lose all of their seats in the Red Wall to Reform, who came second in many of those seats.
In 89 seats, I know, and I think that is a real risk. But you've not engaged with my point, which is that the number one issue for most people is, how much money do I have in my pocket? Can I pay my bills?
Okay,
is the economy going to grow? Where are the policies? Where are the policies?
Quickly, every unskilled migrant that comes into this country costs our taxpayers £150,000, and that goes up to $1 million if they live past the age of 80, right? So we're going to talk about putting money back in their pockets. And quite frankly, if we're asking what Labour have done for people putting money back in people's pockets, they've done the exact opposite. They're taking it away. They're making people in this country very, very poor with spending money.
And also, what you've got to realise, that people are disillusioned with the Tories and Labour, and the Labour start has been diabolical. People are looking for something else. And what Nigel brings is something energetic, it's positive, it's got high energy. And to me, he is the GOAT, which is called greatest of all time. But people are seriously looking for something new. And he speaks the truth. Well, he has freedom of speech. We're not being, you know, Labour are trying to stop us in every corner. We're not allowed to say what we really feel. It's the nanny state. As I say, we can't even have a cigarette in the back garden.
Lizzie, you're literally on TV saying what you feel, so I don't think Labour are doing a very good job of cracking down on freedom of speech.
They're trying.
No, they're not.
They're trying very hard.
Nigel Farage,
You'll eat those words in the Islamophobia.
Nigel Farage is absolutely, I agree with you, an energetic politician, a charismatic politician. He's been incredibly consequential. He's affected a lot of things. Brexit wouldn't have happened without him. Does he have a plan to get Britain growing again and to get more money back in people's pockets? Well, I haven't seen it.
Well, it's really weird
because they're not doing anything to grow the economy. They're taking money out of our pensioners' pockets, literally.
And before the election, he would not give us any details on his policies. And I think if we knew his policies, no one would have voted for Labour.
It's all there in the manifesto, and there was a massive
multiple of them. Keir Starmer set out a statement saying, "I will not harm the pensioners. I will not betray pensioners." And what did he do? He betrayed them.
One of our members, Josh, says grow the economy by putting more money into the British people's pockets, get rid of the subsidies for net zero, reduce immigration, only allow people with skills and jobs into this country, get people working again. That's what we need. That's what Britain wants.
Can I say, there are some people who are doing very, very well in this Labour government. Outrageous pay grades, Mike.
Yes, indeed.
The donors are doing very well. They're looking after Angela Rayner, David Lammy.
All right.
But they're driving away the wealth. Labour are driving away the wealth. wealth. How can we have a strong economy with
Right,
that?
we'll leave that there. Still to come tonight, is masculinity really toxic? We'll delve deeper into tonight's big interview. But next, is it wrong that a foreign criminal who clubbed a man to death in the back of an ambulance can't be deported due to fears over his mental health? You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Prince Harry has got in touch with a lot of people surrounding the royals about a possible return, some sort of easing himself back into what goes on in this country, and tries to repair his image. This has been reported today in the Daily Mail.
Yeah, the major move is being branded as Operation Bring Harry In from the Cold, as he's allegedly growing dissatisfied with advice from American-based image experts.
Let's now speak to Jack Stooks. Now, Jack is a former gardener, senior gardener, top man at Highgrove there. And did you know Harry, Jack?
Yes, yeah, I did. The Harry I knew was always amazing, really good, lovely to be around. I think everybody wanted to be around him, really. He was the sort of life and soul of what we've got to remember is at the time, you know, we knew a book was coming out. We knew various things might come from that. We knew that there was problems with Meghan's family, and there was a lot going on at the time. I think things have, you know, sort of been brushed aside to an extent. Whether or not the book was a mistake, I mean, he might think it was a mistake. He might not think it was a mistake. What we tend to do is we judge him on just the fact that he wrote the book. What we don't think is, why did he write the book? You know, we don't ask the questions as to there was a reason behind him having to have his story known. And maybe, you know, he needed that. Maybe he felt he just needed people to know his side of the story. Hopefully, you know, that family can forgive. I mean, not forget, but be able to sort of move on in a different way.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This Monday, the king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamon Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Thank you very much for your emails about tonight's topics. But actually, I want to go straight to Dr. Renee to ensure she can actually develop this story, which is quite shocking. Take it away, Dr. Renee. God, that rhymed. I'm a poet and I didn't know it.
So, today we learned about a Ugandan man who, when he was 18, chased another man in the UK into the back of an ambulance where the guy went for safety, and then he went into the ambulance and clubbed him to death with a baseball bat. He's since served 16 years of a life term, which had a minimum of 16 years, and an immigration judge has just prevented the Home Office from deporting him because it would be inhumane, because Uganda doesn't have the facilities to support his mental health, and he would miss his mum. Poor thing. So this man's appeal is one of 27,000 currently waiting to be heard under these human rights laws. These appeals have quadrupled since March 23, when there were just 7,500, and the Refugee Council say they're about to go up substantially. Frankly, I don't give a damn about this evil killer's mental health care. I care about the man who died, I care about his family, and I care about us being safe on the streets of the UK.
Wow.
Andy,
yes.
I have to start with you.
I think we're going to have an outbreak of consensus here, because how can you defend that? I mean, I do think we need to be thoughtful about people's human rights if they play by the rules.
Is that Ofcom? Hello. I've done it again.
We need to be thoughtful about people's human rights if they play by the rules. If you don't, you've broken the trust of the country that has let you in and given you shelter from whatever horrible regime you come from. And there's no protection. There should be no protection for people.
Do you know
like
what,
that.
Renee, though? Andy's just said earlier, Tony Blair, best Prime Minister this country's ever known. Who passed the human rights legislation that enshrined the ECHR in British law that has meant it's the Terrorist Charter, in my opinion.
It is the Terrorist Charter, and it's also the Lawyers' Charter, because the fact that these lists are going up and up and up are because these lawyers know now that this is where they can go for protection. We've had a similar case this week. One of the Rotherham groomers that, you know, abused this 11-year-old girl, raped her repeatedly, has been in this country for 2 years, does not speak a word of English, and will likely not be deported because he now has a family here.
Yeah, well, I think that's shocking.
And her one wish, when she was...
I want to help Ofcom here, and I'll give a little bit of balance on Tony Blair. Because Tony Blair, unlike our current Labour government, actually deported hundreds of thousands of foreign criminals during his course of office. I'm not saying that I totally agree with Darren on the human rights laws that he put in, which have really clamped our hands down to be able to do anything about it. But at least he understood, and he's gone on multiple interviews lately and said, this is ridiculous, I don't know what we're doing. And I actually, for the first time ever, I've actually ended up agreeing with Tony Blair. I actually think we should.
There we go.
We should be coming down and...
See the light, Alex.
Well, was it no Flair Blair here? Should be listening to your best mate. I know he's putting Blair's portrait up in place of Margaret Thatcher, but maybe he should take a leaf out of his own book and actually start deporting foreign criminals, and we will solve our overcrowded prisons, and we will solve crime rising on our streets, and we'll make Britain safer.
Lizzie, what do you think about
No, I think it's horrific, and our criminal justice system is a shambolic mess, and there's more sympathies for the criminals than the actual victims themselves, as you just talked about. The Rotherham and the poor girl was on afterwards, said, look, you know, I don't want them to be in this country.
And the judge wouldn't let her
And the judge wouldn't let her.
Change, Justy.
It's absolutely shambolic, and it needs a total rehearsal.
And do you know what? Shout out to Charlie Peters as well, Renee, because he was the only one there. The BBC weren't there.
GB News were amazing to stay.
And let's think about it. You know, everybody says that, you know, the judiciary are impartial, but they're clearly not. They're a left-leaning judiciary, and this is why this is going through so easily.
One of our viewers says, he's called, well, it's Josh again. Hello, Josh, I keep picking you out, I'm so sorry. If people commit crimes, and we all know they have mental health issues, if you're a murderer, you've got mental health issues. I hope his mental health suffers if he was to be deported.
Well, that's it. And look, I'm just going to quickly talk about the Hugh Edwards case. I mean, he was actually spared jail yet again because of mental health issues. Now, what about the victims? What about their mental health? This is where it's all so wrong. It really is.
You're absolutely, well, I was going to say, you're absolutely right, by the way, and I think what those guidelines that the judge followed, by the way, are laws. They are written in guidelines. This is how you prosecute this person.
Yeah, he followed the guidelines.
Right, and he followed the guidelines, which says something about our justice system. We need to rip it up and start again.
One of our members, Richard, says, I am literally incandescent with rage that a treacherous immigration judge has elevated the so-called rights of a Ugandan murderer over those lawfully resident in the UK. There we are.
100%.
Right, lots more to come on the show tonight, including supposed toxic masculinity in our schools. We're going to have a Saturday scrap over Robert Jenrick's claims that our national identity is under threat. And we show you Ed Davies' latest public meltdown. What an embarrassment.
No.
First of all, though, it's your weather. See you after this.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Some of us certainly ended astronomical summer with a bang. We've seen a few thunderstorms around across southern areas today, and there's the continuing chance that we see a few of those pushing across central into parts of Wales. We might clip into the far south of Northern Ireland as we head throughout the evening. We've then got a second pulse of thundery rain pushing its way into the far south of England as we head towards dawn on Sunday morning. Quite muggy and humid amongst all of this as well. Temperatures not dropping too far at all, but it will be chillier for the northwest of Scotland underneath the clearer skies here. Might see a touch of frost in some very sheltered areas. And for Scotland, Sunday is certainly one of a east-west split. The best of the sunshine will be across those western areas. Quite a nice fine start for Lewis and Harris, the Highlands, Argyll and Bute as well, but the clouds still lingering along those eastern coastal areas, maybe with some drizzle around at times. It will try and burn back a bit as we head throughout the day. Northern Ireland seeing some sunshine during the afternoon as well, but for much of Wales, central southern areas of England, this band of rain will be steadily pushing its way northwards with some very heavy pulses possible, and there is a rain warning in force throughout the day, so do take care if you are travelling or out and about. Some disruption is certainly possible. Again, it is going to be quite warm and humid even amongst all this rain, so temperatures where you do start to see some of those sunny spells emerging into the afternoon could still see highs around 20 or 21 degrees Celsius. 18 to 20 degrees Celsius is certainly also possible for the likes of Oban and Fort William pulses in western Scotland. This area of low pressure that's bringing that rain on Sunday is going to become quite slow moving on Monday as well, and so there's potential for further heavy rain around at times. There's still some uncertainty just in regards to the exact placement of this rain, so it's worth keeping up to date with the forecast, but another rain warning is in force throughout much of Monday. Again, some disruptions, surface water issues and spray on roads is possible. Generally dry further towards the north, but you'll start to see some of that rain pushing into the far north of Scotland, and that heralds in a slight change as we head over the next few days, things turning cooler with a northerly wind setting in. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's an incredible good luck. Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
On Tuesday, the 3rd of September, at St Paul's Church in Wilton Place in London, a lucky few will sing highlights from Mozart's Don Giovanni in front of a paying audience with an orchestra and under the baton of Gary Matthewman, the conductor and artistic director of Brunswick Vocal Arts. Why is it important that young singers have this opportunity with an orchestra?
There's a gauntlet, if you like, that I think lots of young singers have to run between finishing the relative comfort of their conservatoire education and becoming firmly established as professional singers. Lots of the ones who show real verve and real promise and work really hard end up for a little bit too long being trapped in a kind of cycle of being the understudy, but some of them are ready to kind of go that extra mile and reach that next milestone. And we as a charity thought, well, what a lovely thing it would be to handpick some of these best young singers, give them intensive coaching on the role that they're going to perform, give them the chance to work with professional players for the first time, and crucially, have the thing professionally filmed and recorded. Because the first question all young singers are asked when they meet somebody influential now is, well, what's your website?
You have coached the singer, coaching the singer either towards a recital or towards their performance, their part in an opera. Tell me a little bit about that process.
It's a case of asking them questions which make them bring a character to life, so that when an audience member witnesses this person singing, they don't just think, oh, that's a pretty noise. They think, oh, there's something going on here that I recognise. And especially in a context like this, which is related, I think, to when people sing recitals. Say they sing 20 songs in that one evening, they've got to present 20 roles, 20 mini operatic roles, if you like. And we need to see the change in their bearing. We need to see the change in their approach to the text, as well as to the kind of the technical focus of their singing and how they produce sound.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's Saturday night, my friends, and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, and, well, I want to read out one of our viewers because Andy's proselytisation for the Labour Party is clearly going very, very well. Linda's written in and she says, hi, watching the show tonight. After the comments from your presenter trying to justify Labour, I'm off to join the Reform Party. That went well. Anyway, plenty more to come tonight, including so-called toxic masculinity being taught as a concept in Britain's schools and a Saturday scrap over Robert Jenrick's comments that England's national identity is under threat. What do you think of that? Don't forget all your questions for Ask the Five as well. It's 7 p.m, my friends, and this is the Saturday 5. And also coming tonight, should we really be teaching the theory of toxic masculinity in British schools. And to reiterate that debate there, Robert Jenrick, is he wrong to say that our national identity is now under threat? Interesting, Ant Middleton, the former SAS guy, actually said on the Reform stage last night that he thinks identity and that crisis site of identity is at the root of our issues. So let me know what you think about that. Then we'll answer your questions in Ask the Five. Send them through to gbnews.com/your say. First of all, though, it's your Saturday night news with the lady in red, Tatiana Sanchez.
Darren, thank you. The top stories. Sir Keir Starmer says Labour's conference would show how Labour are fixing the foundations and rebuilding our country. Now the Prime Minister is intent on shifting attention away from rows over donations and internal Number 10 infighting. Arriving at the conference centre in Liverpool earlier today alongside his deputy Angela Rayner, Sir Keir Starmer said it was Labour's biggest conference ever.
Change has started. And today we're going to set out, and over the next coming days, how we're fixing the foundations and rebuilding our country. So enjoy conference. Very, very good to be here.
And today has been day 2 of the Reform Conference in Birmingham, with party leader Nigel Farage giving his farewell address earlier this afternoon. Last night, Mr Farage told supporters he believes Reform can win the next general election, given the number of people that agree with their principles. He also explained what drove him to stand as Clacton's MP once the general election was called earlier this year.
At almost every level, we've been betrayed. And then I thought about what was happening on our streets. And frankly, I thought to myself, Britain is broken. And then I couldn't help it. But if Britain is broken, then logically, Britain needs reform.
In other news, this year marks the 80th anniversary of Operation Market Garden and the Battle of Arnhem. Celebrations in the Netherlands this weekend will commemorate 80 years since 1,900 Allied troops parachuted into the then-occupied country with the aim of recapturing the bridges of Arnhem. Throughout the day today, the contemporary equivalents of those men recreated the drop at Ginkle Heath in Ida, jumping from an aircraft into the very same place our troops would have landed 8 decades ago. Earlier, Brigadier Mark Berry told GB News how it feels to be there on the ground today.
I think the struggle that soldiers felt here on the ground, the very, very difficult conditions that they faced, epitomise what any one of us feel we could be called to face in the modern era, and therefore we come here to commemorate the bravery of those who went before us and to challenge ourselves to think about their bravery and will we be brave enough when our time comes.
And in just a few short hours' time, Anthony Joshua will challenge Daniel Dubois for the IBF World Heavyweight title. Yes, that is boxing, at a very sold-out Wembley Stadium. And the all-British fight will see Joshua try to take that title from Dubois in an attempt to join the likes of Muhammad Ali, Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield by becoming a 3-time world heavyweight champion. Now, things remained relatively calm at the weigh-in yesterday, although both fighters have said they will do whatever it takes to win. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. I'll be back in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday Five. I'm Darren Grimes and I can promise that you're in for another very lively hour. Now, one of your emails, Elizabeth, on the issue that we're going to be discussing regarding national identity in our debate, the Saturday Scrap, later on. Elizabeth says, when I go to Wales and Scotland, I don't feel their identity is under threat. I haven't been to Northern Ireland, though I would like to, but I felt for most of this century that England's is. And that's an interesting one. And England, of course, has received the biggest brunt of mass migration. Is that the answer there? We'll hear Renee and Andy's thoughts.
Obviously under pressure.
Well, Ireland is, not so much Belfast, but, the Republic of Ireland is. Now, what do you make of this, the fact that nearly a third of English secondary schools are teaching about toxic masculinity in mandatory relationships or health and education courses? That's according to a new report by the Family Education Trust. Toxic masculinity has multiple definitions and its use in educational settings isn't uniform. But in some English schools, the most inflammatory read of the concept that masculinity or men themselves are innately bad. That's being taught to students. These kids must be brought up with a sense of self-loathing. If you ask me, that's a damn disgrace, even if I am wearing makeup that apparently makes me look like a clown. Now, to discuss this, I'm pleased to welcome the political commentator, Conor Tomlinson. Now, Conor, thank you very much for your company. You've read this report and you've seen its findings. How concerned are you that there's a generation of young men, and as you've argued before, Conor, a generation of lost young men who are being told that their sex makes them inherently bad?
Yes, I was actually at the Family Education Trust's conference today where they were discussing the findings. One of the alarming things in the full report is prints of the materials shown in schools that responded. Only 65% of schools complied with the Freedom of Information requests, but one of them showed a slideshow from their lesson materials, and it had a pyramid, and at the base of the pyramid were things that men would stereotypically do, like being the breadwinner or protecting the family. And at the top of the pyramid was rape and abusing your spouse. So the idea is that gendered stereotyped behaviors, actually a lot of these roles that men derive a lot of meaning from using their entrepreneurialism or their strength to protect and provide for their loved ones, leads ineluctably to abusing those very same people. And this is the stuff that is being taught to young boys. Young boys, by the way, through no fault of their own, are a historic disadvantage because 44% of them hit age 18 now and have either scarcely or never had their father living in the home with them. How do they even model healthy masculinity, especially when they're told by the school system that all of their expressions of their competence are toxic? I think it's disgraceful.
And what would you say, Conor, is a healthy reading of masculinity? What would you like the message to be to these young lads who are being brought up in, as you say, fatherless homes and all the rest of it, who don't have a role model in their lives? How can we actually foster a healthy relationship when it comes to, expressing your masculinity and all the rest of it? Because some people are deeply critical of the fact that the likes of Andrew Tate, for example, are coming to the fore for these young lads.
Well, Andrew Tate was a former pornographer who has now turned into an Islamic cleric, so I don't think he's the best role model. I actually quite like Dr. Jordan Peterson's phrase, which is, be the man who is emotionally and physically strong enough to not only carry your father's coffin at the funeral, but deliver a fantastic eulogy for him and allow your female family members to cry into your shoulder and be the emotional rock upon which those waves can break. Essentially, be someone strong enough financially, emotionally, physically, so you can protect and provide for those in your life who need you. And from those acts of service, you'll derive a hell of a lot of personal meaning, a lot of meaning that isn't found in wasting your time on video games or other less savoury pursuits.
I've heard you quite like a video game now and then.
I have quit years ago. I used to play a hell of a lot of them. I think they're a massive time sink for male achievement. I think they're a massive trap for thinking like you're getting things done vicariously. And I think, frankly, a lot of lads are doing these now because schools are really boring. They're treating men like defective girls. They're not ergonomic to the way they like to achieve, which is physical on-hand learning, or they're too general, they're too quiet. And a lot of men aren't doing things like the Scouts or compulsory sports clubs, which aren't sex segregated anymore, and they're not spending a lot of time around their dads like they would, 100 years ago, learning a sort of discipline and looking up to their dad and following in the family business. I think that's why a lot of guys are playing Fortnite for hundreds of hours a week rather than getting a job and a girlfriend.
Conor, I wanted to ask you, because you've done a lot of work around this issue of toxic masculinity and debunking it. From your understanding, where would you say this has come from? Where has this attack on men derived from?
So there's 3 points I'd say for this. Lots of people would say it's feminist theory. Think Judith Butler or Simone de Beauvoir, and that's kind of true. But the feminist theorists are a small sliver of women who have never, frankly, had a healthy relationship with men in their lives, and so project that unhealthiness out onto all women. And when those women have a bad experience with one pretty awful guy, they suddenly think that's all men, and therefore you have this antagonistic relationship between the sexes. But it's also just how culture has changed. Men and women used to have really clearly defined roles and jobs, but as soon as the Industrial Revolution, the birth control pill come along, it sort of throws it up into the air, and men and women don't really know who they are to each other anymore. So I think we've lost the art of negotiation. And I think as well, the internet makes this a lot worse. There's frankly podcasts on both sides that because there's a lot of ambiguity around dating, there's a lot of risk nowadays, especially if everything can be tweeted out or filmed. Lots of people are anxious about approaching the opposite sex or having a relationship, and so these podcasts have started saying this is what all men do wrong, this is what all women do wrong, because there's a sort of uncertainty about
in there. We were just about to go. Yeah, sorry, Connor, you just froze up ever so slightly there, but we're going to let Dr. Renee come in with a question now.
Yeah, hi, Connor. Connor, I'm just thinking, as a mother of a young girl, actually, I wonder about this effect not just on the boys at secondary school, but also the girls who have brothers and fathers. And when they do have a healthy relationship with those men in their lives, this must be massively confusing for them to sit and listen to.
Yeah, it's not doing girls a good service because, as we know from new social covenant polling, 92% of women 18 to 30 in the UK want at least 2 children. That's great because currently Britain's not having enough kids as it is. But the age at which people are having healthy relationships, getting married, having the kids they say they want is being indefinitely put off to the point where now 50% of women in the UK have reached 30 and don't have the kids that they want. And so if you're telling them that the men in their lives are evil rapists in waiting, which is the messaging from some of these lessons, then of course it's going to put them off the relationships that, again, they themselves say they want. So I think it's doing a massive disservice to young women to tell them that the otherwise healthy men in their lives, be it their future husbands or their friends, brothers, fathers, are just a toxic influence they should stay away from.
Andy, just before you ask your question, Cassandra's written in and she says, in what other sphere would stereotypes be applied to one group? If stereotypes were applied to other groups, there would be uproar from the left. This is a sign of two-tier values. Would you accept that?
No, and I don't think boys at school are being told that men are innately bad. I don't think that's what's happening here. My question to Connor is, Connor, do you think it's important that school children, boys and girls, are told and understand that 98% of sexual offences are committed by men and that 94% of domestic violence offences are committed by men?
Yeah, of course. I'd love to see the ethnic breakdown, the cultural breakdown of that, but I don't think you want to provide that because it would go against your narrative. I think it's also good to show that that is a product not of an excess of masculinity, but instead a withdrawal of chivalry. Because if you treat men and women as functionally indistinct, as current culture does, then unfortunately men have no reason to treat women respectfully, chivalrically, which would require them not to engage in those behaviours, as you quite rightly say, are wrong. So if we're going to pretend men and women are exactly the same, except boys who just aren't good enough at being girls, then you've taken away all the social institutions that stop the worst kind of men from doing that to women, and also the best kind of man from stopping those worst kind of men.
And Connor, can I ask you, as you've said so well about being brought up as a single parent, bringing up boys has a massive influence. So who are their role models? Because for me, it would be the teacher. But as we know, sadly, schools are kind of like brainwashing our children.
Well, also the problem is the large amount of teachers are women. And look, there are wonderful female teachers. I've had them myself. But as a rambunctious young boy, especially if you're discouraged from play fighting with other boys, it's kind of difficult to take lessons in physical aggression from women. It's much easier to take it from a man because there's always this sort of unspoken assumption that if you get too out of control, the man can step in as a physical challenge to that, even though obviously if you're a school teacher, you shouldn't. But the main issue is we've sex desegregated a lot of spaces. Those spaces have been infiltrated with the same kind of ideology that you see in schools. And so are you shocked when they turn to online content creators, especially when some of the healthier ones have been chased off the platforms and they're left with the Tates and the like? What you need is more fathers in the home, more men in institutions, more men in roles in public life that are speaking about this. And I think, frankly, a minister for men and boys, though I wouldn't think the Labour Party are too interested in that.
Lizzie, do you think actually there is a crisis of responsibility here, right? Because men, it never used to be the case that men would leave the home, the family home, and just say, well, I can't be bothered with this. That actually, that's the crisis here, that there's a complete dereliction of your duty, what was once perceived to be your duty, and now it's all your own self-interest.
Exactly, and the family unit is so important, and it instills respect, and as you said, you know, having manners, just basic things that aren't there anymore.
Do you think Labour are doing a good job at actually fostering those kinds of...
No, I don't. I really don't. And we need to bring back the family unit. It's so important for fathers to have a huge role in their boys and girls' lives.
Andy?
I don't understand why this has anything to do with Labour.
Well,
they haven't
Labour
been in government. Well, they haven't been for the last 14 years.
Yes,
these trends don't shift over 12-week periods.
I'm not suggesting, but they're doing this in PSHE classes. Hang on, Connor's got something.
In the education system that was completely remodelled by Michael Gove.
I agree. The Conservatives have been absolutely dreadful on this because they did this in 2020. But when the Blair government were in power, I remember them reforming the divorce laws and the like. And Harriet Harman said that men are inessential to the family. So Labour have had this attitude for a very long time. The Conservatives have had this attitude because they're also very, very liberal. And none of them have been willing to say that the best kind of family for a child is to have their biological mother and father married and in the home. And when two Conservatives did say that, which is Danny Kruger and Miriam Cates, they were pilloried by the press and members of their own party because they're absolute cowards.
Well, yeah, because I think actually the sort of Jess Phillips activist response was that actually you're encouraging women rather, who are in relationships which are dysfunctional and potentially bad for them to stay there. How would you respond to that, Connor?
Fortunately, that is the infinitesimally few number of women that are in those scenarios. In those scenarios, I think we should have much harsher penalties for abusing women and children than we currently have, as seen by the recent Hugh Edwards case, to deter the kinds of psychos that would do that to people.
All right, Connor, we'll leave that there. Thank you very much for your time. That's Connor Tomlinson there with his insight into the crisis of masculinity and teaching it in our schools. Now, Dr. Renee is going to go up against Andy Williams shortly, as Robert Jenrick claims that the English national identity is under threat. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News. That was Alex Armstrong.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
More than half of people aged 50 and over feel happier from having a friendship, and 46% feel a sense of belonging too. Tomorrow is the start of Friendship Month. The Oddfellows, a non-profit friendly society that provides older adults with opportunities to create new friendships, is now inviting more people this September to join their local groups and expand their friendship circles through giving a taster activity at local community centres. We're joined now by Jane Nelson, who's the CEO of Oddfellows. Good morning, Jane. Thanks for joining us. As someone in my mid-30s, I've even noticed as well that my own friendship group has diminished over the years as kind of, you know, people get married and have kids and they kind of drift apart and don't make time for each other.
How important is it to have friends separate to your family? What benefit does that bring you?
As you do get older, you do lose friends for a variety of reasons. Either you lose touch or they have an illness or they pass away as you get older. The stats show that people love spending time with their friends. It always takes somebody, doesn't it? Somebody's got to make that first step to send a text to say, do you fancy meeting up for coffee, or do you fancy going to the pub, or whatever the arrangement's going to be. But sometimes somebody always has to make that first step and text or phone. And I think the other key thing is it usually tends to be the same person, but that doesn't matter as long as that connectivity is made, because that's what you need. You need the connectivity. If you think about when we were children, we'd go around the playground and say, will you be my friend? Well, we don't tend to do that as we get older. But be brave, look on Oddfellows website, see all the amazing events we've got on, go to see what's going on in your area, oddfellows.co.uk, or you can telephone 0800 028 1810, and our team will be more than happy to point them in the right direction of their local events, and there's so much going on, 300 going on.
GB News, the People's Channel.
The Britain I grew up in was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public.
Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the Truth, available at gbnews.com.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. As always, thank you very much for all your messages about tonight's topics, apart from this one from Teresa. Teresa says, "Dear Darren, on a lighter note, I suggest you put in a call to Lord Ali and ask for some decent tops."
Actually, he's on the phone now.
She says, "Only joking, I love you really." Thank you very much, Teresa. Maybe you can take me shopping, Tessa.
Getting a rough time.
I am. I look like a clown. I'm wearing a crop top.
Well, it's better than that Pride shirt you wore last year.
That went down very badly. But Ian says the makeup comment made him laugh in regards to toxic masculinity. And there were two questions that were very good from two women. Phoebe, who is a member, and Anne-Marie, who is also a member. Phoebe says, "They are so busy teaching our kids about multiple choice genders, the world being on fire, toxic masculinity, etc., that they've completely forgotten about the value of hard work, personal responsibility, and the importance of the family unit. This is going to be very bad for the future of our nation." And Anne-Marie says, "How does a man do right for doing wrong? I like a man's man, a blokey bloke, if you like. If he knows one end of a screwdriver from the other, so much better. But these do not make a man toxic. But that's a false impression being given by the idiots who are, and useful idiots amplifying it." Well, thank you very much for your views on that. Now, though, ding, 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 because it's time for this. Yes, indeedy, it's time for tonight's main event. To support his bid to become the new leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party, former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick penned a controversial column earlier this week, claiming that England's national identity is under threat, largely due to mass immigration. But is this inflammatory rhetoric, or does Robert Jenrick have a point? Well, seconds out, it's round one. Dr. Renee and Andy Williams are going to take this on. Who wants to go first?
I'll kick off.
Renee, ladies first. Andy, ladies first. You're not a toxic masculine.
No.
All right, Renee, take it away.
So I think that the problem with Robert Jenrick's article, and the only problem, is that he's come to this party far too late. And if only he'd have had these views earlier on, we might have got somewhere in the Conservative Party. Basically, Robert Jenrick said this week that record immigration had changed England's towns and cities. And that is certainly true, because it's happened at such a pace. I know, coming from the East End of London, that the landscape has changed beyond recognition. One stat, for example, 30 years ago, Luton, one of our big outspill towns, had one mosque. Today, it has 45. Now, it's got 45 for a reason, and that will change the landscape for everybody living there. This is causing our identity as English people, British values, Christian-believing religion, that to change beyond belief. And at the same time, Robert Jenrick said not only is our identity fraying at the edges, but the elite look down their noses at anybody that says this and sneers at them. And that is absolutely what happens. We are supposed to be embarrassed about being British, of anything that shapes our identity. And what Jenrick finished with, and I agree with him, is that any government that ignores voters' anger, and there is certainly anger, we have seen that already, boosts the support for the far right. But actually, I would argue that it boosts support for proper right-leaning Conservatives, or you could rename that Reform.
So I vehemently disagree. I think multiculturalism is something that can work, and it's something that we can be proud of if we get it right. I think the real reason there is anger is not because there are people coming to Britain from all sorts of countries all over the world, but because we haven't built the infrastructure in terms of hospitals and all of those sorts of aspects to get it right and make sure that everybody is getting bang for their taxpayer buck. But I think Robert Jenrick has the wrong diagnosis and he has no solutions. This column in the Daily Mail yesterday was so badly written that I asked ChatGPT to write a column on the lost sense of our British national identity in the style of the Daily Mail, and it was way better and far more coherent. If the Tories go down the route of Robert Jenrick's Conservative Party, it's a one-way ticket to irrelevance. They will not win the next general election, and they need to understand, as I was saying earlier about reform, that what people really care about more than anything is having the money to get through the month and having an economy that works for them.
OK, so I actually think you have just demonstrated everything that Jenrick was saying, that the elite think that this is tosh, that it's populism and that most people don't feel like this. You're wrong. He actually said that the combination of unprecedented migration, dismantling of our national culture, integrating multiculturalism, and denigration of our identity has presented huge problems, and that it's put pressure on roads, GP surgeries, schools, while not making the country any richer. And all of the stats actually show that our GDP per capita has not grown for 10 years, but we have nearly 10 million more people. If you think that it is not putting pressure on GPs and hospitals, let me tell you, as somebody that's there, it is.
Well, I agree with you on that, Renee, and that's why I said that I think when it comes to hospitals and GP surgeries and schools and all of those sorts of things, we need more of them. But
all right, Andy, I want to put that question to you that we got in earlier from one of our viewers that said, why does the other constituent parts of the United Kingdom not have an issue with their own national identities? You know, the Welsh nationalism, Scottish nationalism, certainly Ulster Unionism, that actually there is a unique problem with England, and that is down to the fact that we've had this rampant, uncontrolled mass migration of foreign cultures that, frankly, perhaps some of them don't like the country they're in.
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think devolution has helped with Scottish and Welsh national identity because they have their. Oh, I think it has because they have their own governments who can represent them. But actually, I think your response and Robert Jenrick's response is far too simplistic. I don't think it's just about migration. And actually, Robert Jenrick in his piece, he didn't give any tangible examples of what this English identity is. One person's sense of English identity or British identity might not be the same as another's, and why should it be?
Yeah, that's the answer of the elites, actually. We see that all of the time.
I'm flattered that you think
we are
bursting.
We are bursting at the seams, though. We are bursting at the seams as an island. We really are. And it has an ongoing effect on all our infrastructures and getting, doctors. We can't even fly our flag, our own flag. No, we can't. No, we can't.
Oh,
and let me just tell you something.
Lizzie brings up a brilliant point, because Jess Phillips, you know her, don't you? I think she's in the Labour Party.
She is.
She is famous for her sneering at White Man Van flying the St George Cross.
It's a very important issue.
Emily Thornbury, yeah.
Emily Thornbury.
Do you know, behind Reform, Lizzie, yesterday, when they were speaking on the stage, was the words family, community, country. I think that's what's been lost.
That's what's missing.
In chipping away English identity, that's what English identity used to all be.
And I've got to say, hats off to Ant Middleton, if you heard his speech.
His speech is
absolutely
he
phenomenal.
Said identity is at the heart of the issue.
Exactly.
I'm actually really refreshed to see Jenrick's comments, because we have had 14 years of Tories that aren't Tories.
Well, hang on, before you blow smoke up Rob Jenrick's bottom.
Go on.
One of our viewers, Answer This, says, Greg says, the man has changed his views dependent on his own political ambitions.
Absolutely.
He can never win the leadership.
Well, look, I think that's the same for most politicians. The reality is they do change their views with the wind. Keir Starmer has changed his views with the wind over many times.
Flip-flop.
So indeed has Nigel Farage on some issues. Let's just be clear about that. So politicians do and should move with the public's mood, and them sitting still and saying, "Oh, actually, I'm not going to change my mind."
But they should have values.
They should have values.
What I will say is that
We should see this as a refreshing stance from a party that has let down this country for 14 years, and at least they're starting they're starting to say things in the right way.
It's not a refreshing stance. This column could have been written 30 years ago, and if you'd just given it a different date, and ChatGPT wrote a better version. It's not refreshing. It's just reheated. The lowest common
The Tories have lost their way.
Right, well, I have to leave that there. Bren, though, says, the lefty wet. I grew up in Luton and I saw change rapidly. I think that's a fair point. Now, still ahead, folks, we'll bring you this week's Bunch of Five and Ed Davies' butchering of ABBA classics. Will this man stop at nothing to embarrass himself? What a disgrace. We'll also take your questions in Ask the Five. Nothing is off limits, you naughty lot. You're with the Saturday Five, live on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Some of us certainly ended astronomical summer with a bang. We've seen a few thunderstorms around across southern areas today, and there's the continuing chance that we see a few of those pushing across central into parts of Wales. We might clip into the far south of Northern Ireland as we head throughout the evening. We've then got a second pulse of thundery rain pushing its way into the far south of England as we head towards dawn on Sunday morning. Quite muggy and humid in amongst all of this as well. Temperatures not dropping too far at all, but it will be chillier for the northwest of Scotland underneath the clearer skies here. Might see a touch of frost in some very sheltered areas. And for Scotland, Sunday is certainly one of a east-west split. The best of the sunshine will be across those western areas. Quite a nice fine start for Lewis and Harris, the Highlands, Argyll and Bute as well, but the clouds still lingering along those eastern coastal areas, maybe with some drizzle around at times. It will try and burn back a bit as we head throughout the day. Northern Ireland seeing some sunshine during the afternoon as well, but for much of Wales, central southern areas of England, this band of rain will be steadily pushing its way northwards with some very heavy pulses possible, and there is a rain warning in force throughout the day, so do take care if you are travelling or out and about. Some disruption is certainly possible. Again, it is going to be quite warm and humid even amongst all this rain, so temperatures where you do start to see some of those sunny spells emerging into the afternoon could still see highs around 20 or 21 degrees Celsius. 18 to 20 degrees Celsius is certainly also possible for the likes of Oban and Fort William pulses in western Scotland. This area of low pressure that's bringing that rain on Sunday is going to become quite slow moving on Monday as well, and so there's potential for further heavy rain around at times. There's still some uncertainty just in regards to the exact placement of this rain, so it's worth keeping up to date with the forecast, but another rain warning is in force throughout much of Monday. Again, some disruptions, surface water issues and spray on roads is possible. Generally dry further towards the north, but you'll start to see some of that rain pushing into the far north of Scotland, and that heralds in a slight change as we head over the next few days, things turning cooler with a northerly wind setting in. Bye-bye.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. As always, thank you very much for your emails about tonight's topics. Master of Parsnips, I'm not joking, that's the name, said, who is a member, thank you very much, devolution has been a disaster, and where's the devolved parliament for the English? Maybe that would help.
Great again.
I think devolution has torn us apart, though. I don't think it's been good.
I agree.
I think it's created a new tier of politicians, and the last thing this country needs...
more tier.
If we didn't have a devolved Scottish Parliament, Scotland would have voted to leave the UK.
Well, I think there are certain people, taxpayers in England, who would say, ta-ra.
Well, I think it's interesting from a national identity perspective, if that's what you think.
It is, but we have the mad situation where Scottish MPs in Parliament can vote on things that affect English people, but not theirs. Tuition fees was the best example.
All right, folks, it's time for this. All right, Alex, what have you got?
Well, that fourth plinth in Trafalgar Square was meant to be for our late Queen. And that's been going back. I mean, Ken Livingstone even said it was there for the late Queen. And I think it would have been a beautiful tribute to her. But instead, what have we got? We've got an absolute monstrosity. I believe there is now faces of non-gender aligning people up on that plinth, amongst many other monstrosities that have been put on there by the Sadiq Khan. And I think we should stop all that nonsense and put up a beautiful statue of Queen Elizabeth II.
Totally agree with you. Absolutely agree. It looks like a fridge.
It does.
I thought, what is it doing?
It's
there. I mean, why?
It's terrifying.
Why?
Like scared, like a horror film.
It's awful.
The artist is pretty terrifying. She's used blood and the innards of people in the past.
Well, guys, you know what the nice thing about art is that it's subjective, and some of us might like it, and some of us don't have to, and that's
nobody
fine.
likes anything that goes up on that plinth. It's awful.
I quite liked the ship in a bottle. Do you remember that one? That was a good one.
That wasn't bad. But did you like the ice?
Pardon?
I beg your
Remember that?
pardon.
But did you like the ice cream?
I didn't like the ice cream, actually.
with a fly on top. With a drone, wasn't it?
But Alex, they're putting they're going to have a tribute to the Queen in St James's Park.
But she never went to the St James's Park. She never really went there, so it's just really
Didn't she
flat.
walk there?
Well, I think, but it's a public park. It was very hard for her to.
Don't think she spent much time in Trafalgar Square.
No, but what? No, but it's a monument. Why are we putting up with this woke nonsense?
Well,
it's woke nonsense.
People
That's
in
what it
London
is.
keep voting for Sadiq
Sadiq
Khan.
Khan.
That's why. Right.
OK, so you know how much I love Ed Davey, everyone. Well, this week he arrived for his final speech at the Lib Dem conference and he came in to an excruciating karaoke version of ABBA's Take a Chance on Me with obligatory dad dancing. I think, see it before I say any more.
My first in line, this is free. Take a chance on me. Leave me, let me go, wanna be around. You got no place to go if you leave that. Hello, friends. Thank you so much for that kind welcome.
Well, I mean, as one generally has to be drunk to do karaoke, he continued to form and he delivered an incoherent speech with no content whatsoever. Well done, the Lib Dems. Carry on as you started.
Oh, what an embarrassment to the whole country.
I know.
He really is a clown, isn't he? He's a clown. He belongs in a circus. He's done
But
nothing
can I
but
play
do
that
stuff.
It's working for him because people actually know who he is
And they
now.
got 72 seats.
Well, that was by virtue of the Conservatives being absolutely, utterly useless.
No, that was awful. That's like a bad karaoke night at Ryland's house. Honestly, that was awful. I'm telling you.
You know who he is, though, Lizzie, right? Is it helping him on a PR point of view?
Well, I only knew him originally from the post office scandal, but I have to say, who's he appealing to? He's coming down on water slides. I thought he was appealing to the under-7s. Does he not know they don't have a vote? Seriously, he has to stop it. He's losing all credibility, and frankly, it's really wearing thin with me. He's annoying.
Yeah, he just comes across as really immature and unserious for a party that says it wants to be in government at some point. You would never put this man in charge of the country.
It's not credible.
Do you think Keir should do it, Andy?
What, karaoke? Well, I'm in favour of ABBA songs being sung by everybody at all times, is what I would say.
I thought Theresa May dancing to...
Dancing Queen.
Oh, no.
Was embarrassing, but that was something else. He sounded like a cat being strangled.
He actually sounded like me at the end of Christmas Day.
Yeah. Which is an acceptable time to do something like that. Let's just make that clear. It's
No, it was awful.
when you're standing up trying to be Prime Minister at some point.
All right, OK. Now, apparently, the Times have released some research showing that actually electric cars, the costs of them have spiralled, right? Charging them, actually being able to utilise these vehicles that are subsidised, that cost us a lot of money. Electric vehicles now cost double to run compared to petrol and diesel cars. So the question I'm asking folks is, we've been sold a total lie here, haven't we? If you went out and you bought one of these expensive motors, it's costing you double than it would your reliable, trusty petrol and diesel one. And that's if you can find a charger to actually do it with.
Listen,
the whole thing's a con.
I live in the countryside. Try and find a point. Honestly, my neighbour's got one, and she's like, I haven't got a point to charge it.
In the countryside
Literally,
right now.
it is
in a cave.
absolute lie. And you know we're going to have to rebuild bridges, roads. They can't take the weight of them. I was in Wimbledon a few weeks ago. The bus that was electric blew up.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's an absolute con.
Andy, you've sold us all a total pup.
I haven't.
It's a con.
We need the infrastructure to make this viable. And at the moment, we don't have it.
It's still going to cost
we need
double
charging.
because of your
How do you do it? How does the average person afford an electric car? Let's be honest. Let's be honest about
Nobody's
this.
being forced to buy an electric car.
Well, actually, hang on, no, let's be clear. By 2035, that only 5% of all cars made are allowed to be petrol at that point.
Made, but you have to buy them.
Well, but you're forcing
There's
the
nothing
public
else
into
on the
corner, aren't
market.
you?
That's like saying
eventually.
Less than 10 years.
This is a long
Sainsbury's is only going to sell one loaf of bread in a certain brand, and you're like, well, we've got choice.
This is a long-term. It's a long-term transition, and it's a necessary transition.
Right, the detail of this just goes to show that it's another penalisation of people that are not so well off in society because they're paying more if they can't afford a charger at their own house.
Exactly.
This is on-street charging. But people who live in flats and who live in high-rise areas are relying on this electricity.
I tell you where you can stick your charger. Anyway, Lizzie, what have you got for us?
Well, should we welcome, yes, Prince of the Old Bailey, he's back, Harry back into the fold? Should we all welcome him with open arms and say, you know what, Harry, let's forget about the past because, yes, he's back yet again on his own for the 13th time he's back because he's patron of Well Child, the charity. But should we just forget about it all and forget about the past? I can't. I think he's done too much damage. The book, the interviews, everything else, what he's done to dear Kate and his father going through illness like they are. How can we trust him not to go to the press? What's your thoughts?
I would want him back, but I'd want him to make an apology first. And I want him and Meghan Markle to make an apology for their conduct and return to royal duties and be a sub-tier royal as they are, that like the rest of them.
But could you trust them? Look at their back. Look at the track record.
They'll have to prove that to the British public if they ever came back, that they could be trusted, and they have to have small little starts. But I want an apology. We're never going to get one.
Andy, I assume as a bleeding heart Liberal, you're of the view we ought to bring him back. Come on, Hazza, the ginger whinger. Welcome back.
I'm so bored of Harry. I'm bored of hearing about him. I'm bored of. I'm bored of
That's not very inclusive.
Her podcast was dreadful. It was one genuinely on the worst podcast you'll ever listen to. The podcast.
I didn't bother.
They actually dropped the series, even though Spotify paid them millions.
Yeah.
The Netflix series are going to be rubbish.
What about the jam? The jam?
Jam.
She
The
sounds
jam.
expensive jam.
It's gone sour. I think
that's
it's
very, well, that's very
I don't
LA,
forget we've
isn't
got
it?
a polo series coming up. That'll be fascinating.
On Netflix, yeah.
I think
polo.
either bring them back or get them to drop the titles.
Yeah.
Because they can't keep calling around Duke and
Andy,
Duchess.
what have you got for us?
So Gary Lineker is in talks with the BBC to cut his £1.35 million salary
and give it
back to a measly £1 million a year.
Oh, no.
But maybe, actually, just maybe, guys, maybe he has seen the light and realised that actually that is just a bit of a bridge too far. Just a cool million, that'll do.
A bridge too far, £1 million. I don't know.
He's been taking that money for ages, and I think he's under a lot of scrutiny at the minute, as a whole of the BBC are. His wages are outrageous, and I think his nose is put out of joint because, you know, he's been told what he can write on X and what he can't. And we know he's got political aspirations.
And they're trying to roll back that money from Hugh Edwards, of course.
Well, and also, let's... I mean, it's one thing after another with the BBC, and we have at the minute Zoe Ball, who's on massive wages, has gone missing. And this is taxpayers' wages. You know, what is happening with the BBC? And really, I think Gary Lineker shouldn't be our sports presenter. He'd much rather be
do you not think this says something about the licence fee, as Lizzie says? Because actually, if we were allowed to decide and vote with our subscription fees, then it wouldn't matter to us what Gary Lineker was actually paid.
Yeah, well, you're really going to like this, but I think there are some things that we should enforce on people, and actually the BBC is a social good in a ton of ways. I thought the Rupert Lowe's comments about ripping up the licence fee is, you know, or was it Lee Anderson at Reform Conference?
Lee Anderson.
It's a propaganda machine.
It's not. No, it's not. It's the.
Well,
you're happy with their wages, though?
State-managed channel. We have to be honest on what it is.
It's not state-managed. It's not state-managed.
Well, it kind of is. I mean, the government do help appoint the chairman of that.
Let me tell you, in COVID, the constant government narrative that they put out scared people witless, did more harm to people's mental health than anything else in this country. Don't watch the BBC.
Stuart says, don't cut his wages, cut Gary Lineker altogether.
Yeah.
Don't blame him.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Too greedy, and I honestly think the BBC needs a total reboot.
Yeah.
And there's scandal after scandal, and after what's just happened with you,
Careful what you wish for. You'd miss the BBC if it was gone.
I'm not saying no one wants the BBC to go.
Let it be somebody's choice.
These guys do.
They just choose whether they pay for it.
Why would I
choice.
miss the BBC? I've got GB News. What else could you need? Still ahead. My mortgage provider thanks you. We answer all of your questions in Ask a Five. No topics are off limits. I wonder what hells you've unleashed for us this week. You're with the Saturday Five, live on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Good morning, everybody. I honestly don't think Gen Z are as lazy as we've been made out. I was on GB News a couple of months ago talking about a report which suggested that they were very lazy, very work shy, and I honestly don't think that's the case. I respect my elders, so I'm certainly not going to sit here and blame them for the slow return to many offices across the country. But I am actually 20. I've run businesses since I was 15 and 16, since I dropped out of school, and I have always been pro-office, right? So I fit right into that Generation Z category, and I think the office environment is fantastic, not just professionally but socially for young people, especially kind of after COVID, and it halted a lot of their social plans or people going to university, etc. I think getting people into the office, being surrounded by the more senior people, the people with more experience, which is what we're talking about, older people, is actually incredibly positive. But I think Generation Z get a lot of stick in the media, and I'm often sat here debating this about them being called lazy. I guess I think probably what's different is technology is advanced, so people's jobs are a lot quicker, and Generation Z have obviously grew up with that technology, therefore in a position to do jobs quicker. And I guess that's kind of where that kind of narrative has come from, because Gen Z do really kind of go with the whole work smarter, not harder kind of mentality, which is often met with a little bit of stick.
I'm not knocking the young generation at all. I mean, I'm just saying it's by experience. Undoubtedly, they're not as hard-working as the more experienced worker, but I'm certainly not knocking them on that basis. If they had the opportunity, I'm sure there'd be more and more would want to get into the workplace. But unfortunately, I think this COVID has changed the world, and it's made younger people more lazy than older people. Older people just can't wait to, well, shouldn't say that, can't wait to get out of the house to get to work.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This Monday, the king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamon Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. As always, thank you for all of your emails and messages about tonight's topics. Speaking of which, it's time for this. Now, after being told that I need to go to Lord Ali to ask for my new clothing and I need to sort my hair out, apparently I've dyed it too dark, I haven't dyed it at all. I've been told that my makeup makes me look like Casper or a clown.
Right now.
I dread to think what horrors you've unleashed. Now, let's have a look. There's question number one. Last week, I asked, should MPs be banned from accepting gifts? And most of the panel said no. Given the revelations this week, Is the answer still no? And that's from Peter. Thank you, Peter.
Do you know what, Peter? I think the answer has to change to yes, because this is just a gift fest, isn't it? And they're just all abusing it, so let's just cut out the gifts.
I'm a bit more nuanced than this. I think we should have rules as to what gifts they can receive. I think receiving money for clothes is ridiculous.
Do you know what? One of our viewers, Andy, said, how come a street cleaner can't be given a tenner on the street, right? They would be told they can't accept that money. But Sir Keir Starmer can receive all and sundry from Lord Ali and give him access to number 10 Downing Street.
He's had more gifts given to him than any celebrity like Kim Kardashian. I mean, I cannot believe it. I think there's got to be a limit on it, but I really think you cannot be hypocritical and do what the Labour Party have done.
I think that there's a transparency system and it's important that people stick to that. Maybe there should be a limit on certain things being offered as gifts. My main thing from Keir Starmer's perspective is that all of this has been a really bad look and I just wish he hadn't done it.
I wish he would leave. Right, there's the next question. Hi, Darren. Is it good that Nigel Farage thinks Andrew Tate is a good role model for young men? So that goes back to our question earlier. Renee's got some thoughts.
Oh, do you know, this is what I think about Andrew Tate. I just think as a society we shouldn't be, you know, losing our knickers over Andrew Tate. What we should be doing is asking a question of society about why our young boys feel the need to gravitate there and then fix that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what Connor said earlier on as well, actually. I think Connor nailed it. I do think he's a bit of a grifter. I think he knows how to cause controversy. Some of the things he says are absolutely spot on.
Are you talking about Nigel Farage or Andrew Tate?
Andrew Tate. Very, very clear about Andrew Tate.
All right.
So yeah, I agree with Connor.
Yeah, I'm not sure Andrew Tate is a good role model, to be honest with you, but...
No, Andrew Tate is not a good role model. As a mother of two boys, I would certainly... He's not in any shape or form.
All right, the next one briefly. Dipping your crisps into the head of your pint. Is it acceptable or dirty? Because one of our viewers says that salt and vinegar Seabrook in a Guinness is key.
I've never done it.
Renee, is that part of my 5 a day?
I'm opting out of this. I don't drink beer, I don't eat crisps. I'll leave it to you guys.
Well, I actually do drink beer and I do love crisps, but I think that is really awful and I would hate to be on a date with a guy that did that. No way. I don't mind a bit of ketchup and mayo with a chip, but no way.
I want to ask you this one, because this is a funny one. What non-human species would the panel identify as? This, of course, comes as the wolf, the child identifying as a wolf, and the school affirmed the identity of this child.
I know.
Andy?
It's a good question. An otter.
Oh,
it's hairy.
They're really sweet animals. They pair up.
Lisa?
I'd be a cat because I have my own rules. I like to be strict.
I think I'd be a cat. I, quite like to snoop in people's gardens.
Poop in people's gardens.
Crap if I don't.
And they're very clean.
I would have said cat, but I'm going to go for lizard then.
A lizard?
I think they're beautiful.
Oh, right, that's a Keir Starmer, isn't it?
I was going to say, well, talking of non-human species, I'd be Free Gear Keir. He seems like he's having a great time.
He's not a species, is he?
No, it's non-human. It's non-human.
All right.
Possibly lizard, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, the whole animal thing, Andy, were you actually supremely relaxed about that, this kid?
Who thinks he's a wolf?
So I actually hadn't heard this story until Renee was telling me about it before the show, and no, I mean, it's just...
One lefty we had on this channel, whose name I won't...
Who I argued with this morning about it.
Oh, did you? Well, he was saying that actually it's transphobic to question...
Ridiculous.
Last I checked, being a wolf was not a gender.
No.
And why
ridiculous.
should children be identifying as anything anyway, right? Just do your maths in English.
Children always want to be animals and things, and you just say, there, that's nice, get on with it.
Yeah, get a grip.
No, I think Lee Anderson's speech at the Reform Party said it all. We're losing touch with reality. Can children just do what they should do at school?
Kick a football around, climb a tree.
Learn about geography and history.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I also think that on a couple of themes that we've covered there, on the toxic masculinity in schools and the wolf thing, it's quite clear to me that education is just going off a pier.
Yeah. It's very worrying for me with a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
It's quite clearly a link there as well, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much to our guests tonight, Alex, Renee and Lizzie and Andy. Thank you for that. Now, thank you very much to you at home watching as well. One of our viewers has written in and says, Angela says, Darren, you should get a couple of beverages down you more often before the show. This has been brilliant. Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Angela. I need no excuse, trust me. Next up, it's brilliant Saturday Night Showdown hosted by Steve N. Allen. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Some of us certainly ended astronomical summer with a bang. We've seen a few thunderstorms around across southern areas today, and there's the continuing chance that we see a few of those pushing across central into parts of Wales. We might clip into the far south of Northern Ireland as we head throughout the evening. We've then got a second pulse of thundery rain pushing its way into the far south of England as we head towards dawn on Sunday morning. Quite muggy and humid in amongst all of this as well. Temperatures not dropping too far at all, but it will be chillier for the northwest of Scotland underneath the clearer skies here. Might see a touch of frost in some very sheltered areas. And for Scotland, Sunday is certainly one of a east-west split. The best of the sunshine will be across those western areas. Quite a nice fine start for Lewis and Harris, the Highlands, Argyll and Bute as well, but the clouds still lingering along those eastern coastal areas, maybe with some drizzle around at times. It will try and burn back a bit as we head throughout the day. Northern Ireland seeing some sunshine during the afternoon as well, but for much of Wales, central southern areas of England, this band of rain will be steadily pushing its way northwards with some very heavy pulses possible, and there is a rain warning in force throughout the day, so do take care if you are travelling or out and about. Some disruption is certainly possible. Again, it is going to be quite warm and humid even amongst all this rain, so temperatures where you do start to see some of those sunny spells emerging into the afternoon could still see highs around 20 or 21 degrees Celsius. 18 to 20 degrees Celsius is certainly also possible for the likes of Oban and Fort William pulses in the western Scotland. This area of low pressure that's bringing that rain on Sunday is going to become quite slow moving on Monday as well, and so there's potential for further heavy rain around at times. There's still some uncertainty just in regards to the exact placement of this rain, so it's worth keeping up to date with the forecast, but another rain warning is in force throughout much of Monday. Again, some disruptions, surface water issues and spray on roads is possible. Generally dry further towards the north, but you'll start to see some of that rain pushing into the far north of Scotland, and that heralds in a slight change as we head over the next few days, things turning cooler with a northerly wind setting in. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be the next Great British Giveaway winner with a whopping £36,000 in tax-free cash in your